Howdy everyone, I'm the Shadow the Hawk, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome, stick around, hope you enjoy, and if not, feel free to go, won't really bother me too much. As you can tell by the title, today's video is going to be talking about goblins, not all goblins, just D&D goblins, though I will be filling the gaps of certain details about goblins that aren't really described in D&D with goblins from other settings, such as Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, Goblin Slayer, etc. But at their core, if there's something explicitly stated about D&D goblins, I will be adhering to that. And I won't be like doing, say, Goblin Slayer goblins, how they can breed with everything because there are no female goblins. Female goblins exist. That's a thing in D&D. I'm not going to just pull out of nowhere that goblins can breed with anything because edgy stuff. No. It's going to be sticking to D&D canon, just filling in the gaps. You know, I'm like a gene stealer. I look at someone's DNA helix, and I fill in the gaps with gene stealer DNA, and 1,000 years down the line, your planet's getting invaded by Tyranids. So, what are goblins? For the uninitiated in D&D, what is a goblin? A goblin is a small, humanoid creature, typically with green or yellowish skin, large ears, bigger than an elf's, a large bulbous nose, bigger than a dog's, and a innate drive to oppress or be oppressed. No, these are not some, like, weird IRL slave allegory. If you look into their lore, goblins were once just, they were people. They were vibing, they were frolicking, they were existing. And then big bad evil Maglubiet rolled up, slaughtered their gods, and told them, you work for me now. I'm sure the goblins tried to resist. Maglubiet pulled out a whip, whipped them, and they proceeded to realize, wait a minute, whip, that gives power, and it is now in the core of every single goblin who was ever born to seek to control or be controlled. You can even see this in the naming scheme of their caste, with the upper class, what would normally be the warrior caste in most societies, or the nobles, or whatever, is referred to as the Lashers. Because, again, goblin society is rooted entirely predicated on the idea that the weak are to be oppressed and the strong are to dominate. Left in a vacuum, goblins will gladly oppress each other. But typically goblin tribes are not left in a vacuum. They're typically oppressed by something much bigger than themselves. Maglubiet intended them to serve hobgoblins and bugbears, which will be getting their own videos at some point down the line, but anything sufficiently powerful enough in the vacuum of a hobgoblin or a bugbear can reasonably control a goblin. A giant, an ogre, a witch, adventurers, so long as they don't seem to be too goody-goody. If they seem to be the types that are somewhat compatible with the whole where there's a whip, there's a way mentality, the goblins will probably be fine. Now, why did I decide to make a video about goblins? Well, the big reason is I wanted to talk about the hobgoblin legions, but I couldn't cram everything down into a video, and I decided I'd start with the goblins, because goblins, frankly, are teeny humans. Because I'm going to describe how goblins exist in the world when they're not being oppressed by something, which is a very, very, very rare circumstance. And I want you to tell me if it reminds you of something. Some other race that typically exists in fiction. Weaker, slower, less intelligent than everything else around them in a world full of monsters. They need to band together in civilization. They find a way to survive no matter the climate, whether it be wintry hellhole, jungly hellhole, temperate fine zone, but full of evil, scary monsters in the forest or the roads. And they are typically led by the people who carry the most martial ability, or the ability to execute magic, or the ability to produce items that are necessary for survival, such as weapons, armor, potions, poisons, pornos, etc. I just described humans and goblins. Now, some of you might be going, that describes dwarves or elves, or... Not really, because dwarves, elves, kobolds, all these other races have something intrinsic about them that allows them to survive in the world better. Dwarves and kobolds innately can dig and interact with mountains in the underground, but you put them in a wintry zone or a desert or a jungle, they're not... Maybe some of them might be able to adapt, but a whole civilization of dwarves would just go into the ground. They would just dig a hole and get out of there. The elves are magic, and also seem to be able to, within a generation or two, magically attune to their environment, given you have sea elves, astral elves, moon elves, wood elves, high elves, drow are a thing. In my own setting, you have dark elves. Like, it's just elves, they specialize. But humans, you take a human from a winter zone, toss it in a jungle, it'll adapt eventually. It'll probably get eaten alive by a few different things, but eventually the humans will figure out a way to live in that jungle, as opposed to purely adapting to be a creature of the jungle, or to just go into the ground and hide, or to leave. Goblins are the very same way. Now they have a higher mortality rate than humans, but they can reasonably survive in most environments. But the extra little problem goblins have is, unlike a human, which can make a spear and kill big scary monster, goblins, they don't really have the luxury of killing most things they encounter, because they're teeny, they're tiny. They would need to coordinate, and when your society is propagated on oppressing someone else, you're not exactly going to be the most trusting of things. You aren't a kobold, where the collective comes first. You're a goblin. You come first. So at the end of the day, if you see an opportunity to kill a rival, you're probably going to take it. So there's not going to be really any good group cohesion to take out the big scary wolf that's been eating your kids. Humans, on the other hand, well, a human is big enough that if you give it a spear, it'll probably kill that wolf in a one-on-one fight. And if it can't, the guy behind him will be able to finish the job. And there's also more likelihood of loyalty existing within humans, because while we are innately selfish jackasses, we aren't innately driven to grab a whip and start whipping whatever we deem as a weaker human than ourselves. This adaptation makes goblins a very interesting population, though, because they're much weaker than humans, they need to do more drastic adaptations in order to survive in an environment. For example, let's say you've got a goblin with a tribe that understands domestication of dogs or wolves, is out in the woods and it gets eaten by a giant spider. And the other goblins go out and figure out what's going on, and eventually one of them comes back and says, there are giant spiders there. Humans, with the ability to kill said giant spiders, would muster a war party and go kill those giant spiders. The goblins might try something similar, and the spiders would be eaten good for a couple of days, and the goblin population would be brutally decimated. But don't worry, for the entrepreneurial goblins, this is called climbing the ladder. And eventually one goblin will realize, wait a minute, spiders eat meat, dogs eat meat. We tame dogs by giving them meat, and when they try to bite us, we whack them in the face. So, I'm going to go out to a spider. I'm going to go find a spider, and I'm going to give it meat. And if it tries to eat me, I'm going to whack it. And eventually, the spider should not be stupid enough to keep trying to eat me. I imagine 9 times out of 10, the spider is stupid enough to try to eat the goblin. And either the spider will die of blunt force trauma to the skull, or the goblin will get eaten. But eventually, a goblin will survive and find that 1 in 10 spider that is able to be tamed. And it will figure out a way to make this taming process less than a 1 in 10%, and a more likely possibility. And eventually, this tribe will start using these spiders. This will take multiple generations, and thousands of goblins will probably die to complete this goal, but eventually, this tribe will figure out how to use spiders. And then, they might go from there. Oh, hey, spiders have venom. And we have goats. We can milk goats. What if we milk the venom from the spiders, and now the goblins are working with spider venom? And on it goes. But it doesn't just need to be spiders. Yetis, drakes, other sentient races like kobolds or humans. The goblins can eventually figure out a way to intrinsically oppress or make use of some other organism, and there's more incentive for them to use it than kill it, because killing it, honestly, is not going to be as easy, and you can't exactly trust Dave from accounting to help you out and deal with these things. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the society of the goblins a little bit more. I already mentioned the lashers. What are lashers? It's basically the terminology they use for nobility. These are your warriors, your spellcasters, your hyper-skilled craftsmen, such as your blacksmiths, your alchemists, your poisoners, your warg or spider tamers, etc. These are the people who have something to bring to the tribe, where you can't just kill them, and the tribe can go on without them. Or, someone you can't kill easy, like a wizard or a warrior. These are going to be the people who are setting policy and consensus, the leaders of the tribe. And they would also be the people who are able to give past boons down to their children, meaning, again, even goblins have to deal with noble bullshit. The next tier below that is what I would determine to be the warrior caste. This is the hunter caste. These are going to be predominantly wolf riders, or in populations where they have access to wolves, or if they're using spiders, or axe beaks, or other wolf analogs. These are your mounted archer type units. These are the ones that you will typically encounter as combatants when fighting goblins. They are just capable of enough of combat to not run away and to actually kill things, but they are not lethal enough to really be called actual soldiers. They're more like tribal warriors. And their primary purpose is to hunt meat. That is why they exist. They will go out and they will kill deer and rabbit and human and spider and bring it back, and the tribe will eat the meat. But they also, again, double as combatants when it's necessary for them to, be combatants. Something tells me there's a lot of widows in this population group when they go to war. The next tier below that is the gatherers. These are going to be your general labor population. These are going to be your butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, your builders, all these people. Not really much to be said. I mean, if you know what a peasant is, that's what these are. Then, the next tier is the pariahs. These are going to be the goblins that, for whatever reason, are deemed like, no, you're not really of any value. They're not slaves! They still have freedom! But all that really means is we whip them a little bit less badly. These might be the disfigured goblins. These might be the stupid goblins. These might be the goblins whose dad decided to lead their tribe into an ambush and got everyone slaughtered. It could be a goblin that's green or yellow in a tribe of the opposite color. It could be a pink and purple goblin. It could be an albino goblin. Whatever the goblin is, it's a goblin that isn't liked. So it's down at the bottom caste, where it will only be allowed to breed with other members of the bottom caste. And eventually, because it was a pariah, its family will forever be a pariah, unless they can do something to elevate themselves out of the caste, or somehow get the hell out of Dodge and go found their own tribe. If it could be possible to have a worse tier than pariah, goblins have that tier. Slave. Now you might think, oh, well, obviously slave's going to be bad. No, this is a civilization that exists around the oppression, the beating, and the submission of the weak. So this isn't like human slavery, where there is there are examples of someone who's a jackass who will beat the crap out of their slave because it's fun, but at the end of the day, human slavery is built around a level of economic or societal value. You're not just going to kill a slave because it makes you feel good. At least the average person isn't going to do that. Goblins do not have that level of inclination. They will most likely beat their slaves to literal death, not for any actual reason, just because it makes them feel good. Because they are the oppressors. They are the lashers. They are the slave drivers. When they get the chance to be the slave drivers and when they're not being slave driven themselves. So, if your options are be a goblin slave or kill yourself, I would recommend the latter option because the former option is going to be worse than hell. Because at least in hell, you get a cool stick. You get a cool looking little stick thing. You get to poke things. So how would you most likely encounter goblins? If they're not going to be, slaves of something else. You're probably going to run into them as low-level raiders. Raiding outlying farmsteads, mines, maybe something on the road. These would be the clans that are decently well-developed and have a thriving hunter population that's actually able to spend time raiding. So I would say something along the lines of maybe 100 goblins with 20 to 30 of those being actual combatants, and maybe 5 of those being of the Lasher class. Of course, that number could vary, and I'm drawing conclusions based off just human population demographics, but I think that's a fair assessment. 20 to 30 actual combatants out of a tribe of 100, I would think that's pretty fair. That's just me, though. I'm just reading the script to see if I missed anything. No, I didn't really miss anything. So, I guess I could go a little bit into, Goblin Magic. Let's go into Goblin Magic, actually. To round this off, let's talk about Goblin Spellcasters. Booyags. That is a very general term that literally probably just directly translates to Spellcaster. Goblins don't really delineate between sorcerer, wizard, guy who happens to have a wand. If you're able to shoot fireballs out of any orifice, you're a Booyag. Even if you're just using a wand to fireball, they can only work 3 times a day, you're a Booyag. Goblins are just as susceptible as every other race to be a cleric, a sorcerer, a wizard, etc. For some of those, though, it's a limitation of resources. Like a wizard, they would need access to a wizard college. Not necessarily going to have that. As a bard, they would need to go to a bard college. A warlock, Maglubiet probably wouldn't let them make those kinds of deals, but if they could find some way, they could probably sell their soul. They'd also probably need to sell a couple of their family members, but that's just me being racist against goblins and viewing them as less than people. Clerics and paladins are also on the table, but those would most likely be for Maglubiet or for evil things. But in all honesty, why would Maglubiet bother bestowing powers on a goblin when he's got a perfectly good bugbear or hobgoblin to use? So most Booyags that are actually Booyags would probably be sorcerers, just because there's like that natural latent energy. And a sorcerer would most likely be able to gather a tribe around itself and dominate its local area, at which point you would have a real threat. So if you're thinking about like running a low-level campaign, a Goblin Booyog would be a very good combatant. Or maybe, you know, goblins coming out of the deep forest with some kind of monster they're riding. Like a spider or a bear. Like somehow this tribe of goblins figured out how to tame a bear. And they ride bears like Hannibal used war elephants. I don't know. That could be pretty cool. Anyway, I've been the Shadow of the Hawk. If you got any questions about goblins or think I need to clear something up or just think I'm an edgy son of a bitch and want me to stop making these videos, leave a comment down below expressing your opinion. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a dislike down below. If you want more content from me, if you want to tell me that this is stuff you want to see, leave a subscription. That'll also keep you up to date on videos and streams going forward. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day. See you next time. Peace. Where's the button?